Hi everybody, this is Fred the Pirate here for a review of Game of Thrones episode 3. A review for season 3, episode 3 of Game of Thrones entitled Walk of Punishment. So, a lot happened this episode. I liked it a lot. There was a lot of interesting moments. So the way the episode starts off is we are at the funeral of Catelyn's father and Rob's grandfather, and so the episode starts off and we're sending Rob's grandfather off, on his funeral pyre, and this guy in this armor is trying to use an arrow to light it on fire, but he keeps missing. Like, he shoots once and he misses, and he shoots again and he misses, and he tries to shoot him 3 times and he just doesn't do. So then this other guy who's right there, just shoves him out of the way and is like, "You're being an idiot." And so then he does it and he gets it the first time, and it's like it's all way far away. And like, and while this is happening, like, everybody's like cringing, but after the pyre's lit, like, everybody's relieved. Like, you can see that Catelyn's relieved, and so is Rob. And it turns out that the 2 gentlemen that we meet, the incompetent one, is Rob's uncle and Catelyn's brother. And so obviously he's in charge of, the Tully stuff now that Catelyn's father's deceased. And so we get introduced to him when he's talking to Rob and the as of yet unnamed gentleman who is named later, and that guy turns out that he's Catelyn's uncle, and thus he would be Rob's great uncle. And he's known as the Blackfish. So we meet Catelyn's brother and her uncle. And so apparently, Rob and Catelyn's brother have a conversation about him taking a mill in the Riverlands when he wasn't supposed to. And Rob, is telling him, "I told you to wait at this area and you just went off all half-cocked, and you took this mill." And he asked him, like, "Well, why did you take the mill?" And he's like, "Well, the mountain was stationed near the mill, and I was, gonna chase the mountain away, and I sent," and and his uncle's like, "I sent Tywin fleeing." And it's like, and Rob points out, "I told you to stay there because I wanted you to lure the mountain west so that we could entrap him in the north and then kill him, because the mountain's not a strategist, he's not a tactician. We could have easily let him in there and killed him, and instead, because you were chasing glory, he ran away." And one of the guys said, that his uncle's bragging about how, like, him taking the mill was this great idea because of glory, and Rob was like, "You're being an idiot." And and his uncle tries to justify his failure by saying, "Well, I captured 2 Lannisters," and it's like, but they're like these no-name Lannisters that nobody gives a shit about. So it's like, and like that he mentions that, and Rob asks him, like, "Well, how many men did you lose taking this fort that's not important, this mill that's not important to us, and that serves no purpose to us?" And he's like, "We lost like 270 guys." But then he's like, "Well, we killed more Lannisters," and Rob makes the point, well, we need our men more than the Lannisters need theirs. Like, they have all the money and all the men, and we can't afford to be sacrificing our men for bullshit reasons." And I have to say, that's definitely probably one of the parts of the episode I liked that I was particularly interested in because, like, I think that was one of the few times where Rob was actually a very effective um, tactician. And I think, through most of the war, when we've seen Rob, like, I think his strong suit is like he's not a tactician, like he's not the smart guy. Like that's kind of Tywin's thing. Like I think Rob's strong suit is that, he's really nice generally and he's really loyal to his people and he cares about them. And although I think, the tactical conversation he has with his uncle, it's like, I think a lot of that is motivated for the fact that, he does care about his people. But, he points out the fact, like, we don't have the resources to be fucking around trying to get mills that we don't need. And it's like, I'm not here so you can get extra glory. It's like, if we fuck around and we waste our resources, then we're gonna lose the war. And your stunt to do glory stuff isn't gonna help. And so that was a particularly interesting conversation he had with his uncle. Um, I don't know if we're gonna see more of his uncle. I definitely hope we see more of his great uncle because later in the episode, he and Catelyn have a conversation about his relationship with her father. Apparently they had a fairly cantankerous relationship. And honestly, he kind of seems like a really smart, you know, well-versed soldier. So I think we'll probably see more of the Blackfish, which is Catelyn's uncle, who's the older, scruffier guy that we meet. So I'd definitely like to see more of him. And besides that, we get some stuff with Talisa, tending to the two aforementioned the Lannister hostages, which are like these two teenagers, and they ask her a bunch of stuff about Rob, like rumors about him turning into a wolf, and him, eating people, and so she like plays it up, but she says, you don't have to worry about it because he doesn't eat children. So that's pretty much what we see of them. Um, and then right after that, after we were in the Riverlands, we go to King's Landing and we get to see Tywin holding a council with the small council. And so like it starts like and he's in this dark room and he's like there's this long table and there's him at the end and then there's like these 5 chairs on one side. And it's like, and that shit's gonna go down. And although honestly, not too much like angry stuff going down. Like honestly, like when I saw that, like, and he had Littlefinger and Varys and Tyrion, like I expected, like he was just gonna go hand people their asses, which is like he kind of did, but he kind of didn't. So what happens in the meeting is Cersei comes in and she moves her chair right next to Tywin, and Tyrion moves his chair at the end. And so Varys and Littlefinger and like the older guy who I don't remember what his name is, but like the old scruffy guy in the toga. So there's him. So they're at one end, and so we find out that the Lannisters are very aware of the fact that Jaime is no longer in the, is no longer a captive of the Starks or the Northmen, so they know about that now. Which I guess seems really weird because later in the episode, Jaime mentions that he's been a captive of theirs for like a year. So I had no idea that much time had gone by. Which it just this show makes it seem like everything's happening maybe in 3 or 4 months. So it's really weird that a whole year, if not more, has gone by in the show. So that's really interesting. So he mentions, to Varys and Littlefinger and the older guy whose name I forgot, that, he pretty much says, like, you guys have, like, all the spies in the world. And it's like, how come a bunch of, bumfuck yokels in the Riverlands knew that my son wasn't a captive of the Northmen, like, forever ago, and I'm just now starting to learn about this, and you guys have all the goddamn spies ever. And so they're like, do you know where he is? And they're like, no. And he's like, well, get on that shit. So, which is a good point. Like, how do they not know where he is? And they have all these damn spies. And then after that happens, essentially, he appoints Littlefinger to be the Lord of Harrenhal, and he also appoints betroths Catelyn's sister to him. And so not only does that make Littlefinger in charge of Harrenhal, but that also makes him in charge of the Eyrie and the Vale. Um, so that'll be interesting. And he mentions that Catelyn's sister, whose name I eludes me right now, um, she's always been fond of him. I guess it's kind of interesting that we obviously we met Catelyn's sister first season, and she was like the creepy one, and she like had the 8-year-old that was still breastfeeding, and that was weird. And in her brother and Catelyn's brother, who we meet this episode, is kind of arrogant, but he's an idiot. So I guess it's kind of interesting to find out at least how they're portrayed in the show. I don't know how they're portrayed in the books because I just watched the show, but it's interesting how Catelyn's kind of the most competent of her siblings. And I guess that's weird because her uncle seems like he's cool, and and there's nothing that makes her dad seem like he was weird, because I think a lot of people have a huge amount of respect for him. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's how they made that deal in the second season to get the bridge. Catelyn's gone all over the Riverlands and everywhere, just saying I'm a Tully, I'm good for my shit, I'm a Stark, I'm related to the Tullys, I'm good, But it's kind of weird how weird her sister is and how incompetent her brother is, because it's obvious that it seems like, at least from Catelyn, that the Tullys seem like they had their shit together, and it's and those two just don't. So, I mean, I don't know if that's a thing with her brother. I don't know if that's a thing about age, because he looks really young. But with that said, so anyways, Littlefinger's is betrothed to Catelyn's sister, and so Tyrion kind of makes the point, if with the wedding coming up and it being a winter, wouldn't it be a bad idea to lose the Master of Coin, which is what Littlefinger is? And so both Tywin and Cersei agree to that, and so does the older guy. And so Tywin mentions that he's going to appoint Tyrion the Master of Coin, and Tyrion's like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's I don't know how to do anything with managing money. It's I'm good at spending money, but I'm not good at managing it. And so Cersei and the older guy both get in a barb about, well, I'm sure you'll do a great job, because we know that both Cersei and the older guy don't like Tyrion, so they obviously both of them have it in for him, and I think both of them are hoping he's gonna screw up. But honestly, I think Tyrion will probably do a pretty good job. I mean, honestly, I think if he can handle being, hand of the king, especially Joffrey's hand of the king with all the shit that was going on, I think he'll be a pretty effective, master of coin. So I'm definitely going to look forward to seeing how that works out. So pretty much that's what happens in King's Landing. I believe right after that we jump back to Over the Wall, and so we meet up again with Mance Rayder and Jon and Ygritte, and and then there's the guy with the beard, which I don't know if they've said his name, and then the warg guy. So I don't which I don't remember his name offhand, but I do think they say it. So apparently we meet up with them, and we find them in the middle examining this decapitated horse head in the snow, and it turns out like that, like it was made, like it turns out that it's this part of this big spirally formation that's made out of dead horse parts, and it's like, and this thing's like freaking huge. It's like super super huge, and apparently the White Walkers made that, and apparently Mance Rayder makes the comments like they're always the artist, and I guess that's, and that makes sense. Like I think the couple of times we've had like slight run-ins with White Walkers, like before they're there, but when they're nearby, that they make these like weird artistic things with dead stuff. Like it's like, and it makes me wonder, like, why do ice zombies like making dead stuff art? Like it's like, and the spiral is really interesting. So I guess honestly, I'm really looking forward to what does that mean? Like, why do the White Walkers like doing that? Like, it is like, do they just like fucking with people, or is it like, are there like more to it than that? So definitely looking forward to that getting figured out. So we find them there, and so Mance mentions, when they find, they're like, there's just the dead horses, like in the spiral art structure, like there's not any people, and so they know that like a bunch of the Night's Watchmen have been turned into, the White Walkers, so they're zombies now, and so because of that happens, him and John have an exchange, and John asks, like, do you think any of them could have gotten, away? And he's like, and Mance says maybe, but it's not likely. And and he does mention the fact that, the Night's Watch, are really far away from the wall. And it's like, they're really far from home. So it's like, and he pretty much says, like, they're dead either way. Like, either, they're, gonna have their wall stuff happen to them one way or another, either through dealing with the wildlings or the White Walkers. And he says, either way, I don't really care what happens to them. But Mance mentions to the bearded guy, who I think is related to Ygritte. I'm pretty sure those two are related. I don't know why. Well, mostly it's because they both have red hair, and it's like, and I don't really think that can be that common of a trait. So it's like, so he mentions, to get ready to scale the wall and to take John with him, and he was like, if John fucks up, just push him off and see if crows can fly. And so the red-haired, bearded dude is like, well, how will I signal you? And he's just like, send up your eagle every night, and I'm gonna light up a big ass fire. So, Mance is preparing to, start his war, and so that'll be interesting. And so far, I'm really liking Mance Rayder's character. Like, he's really charismatic, and so it's really fun to watch him. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of him, because he really is a really fun and charismatic character. So after that happens, we go back to the surviving members of the Night Watch, and they go back to Craster's house, and they're going to stay there and rest for a little bit. I imagine they're not going to stay there for too long, and, and Craster, gives them a bunch of shit. And while this is happening, one of his wife/daughters, is giving birth, and so she's making a lot of noise, and then, while they're there, Craster gives Sam a bunch of shit for being fat. So I think this is like the third episode in a row that Sam's got that shit for being fat. So, and it's like, I mean, like, the first time they did it, like, it was okay, like, and there was some times where it was understandable, like, but, like, now it's like, I feel like you've done the Sam fat thing for 3 episodes. It's like, we know he's fat, and we know he's kind of pathetic, but, like, he's still a Night's Watchman, so, like, I think we can let up on Sam. I think he's taken enough of a beating. So he goes out into his hut, and he sees Craster's wife/daughter give birth, and it turns out that it's a boy. So I think they're gonna end up sacrificing that to the White Walkers, and so that's pretty much what happens up, beyond the wall. And so I think after that, we meet up with Arya and her gang. So she's still with the brothers without banners, and she's kind of like their prisoner slash guest. Like they don't have her chained, but I don't know if she like they say she's technically free to go. So it's kind of iffy what her situation is. Um, so her and I think her friend Godric's his name. So he helps out with their armor, and so he's pretty. So he's Robert's bastard, and so he's pretty cool with doing his blacksmith stuff, and he's cool with them. There's a guy, no, it's Gendry. That's what his name is. I keep messing up his name. So it's like Gendry, Robert's bastard. So he's pretty cool with it. Um, they take the Hound with them, and they give him a little shit. But Hot Pot, the fat kid, he ends up staying at the end, because he's mentioned that he made some bread for the innkeeper, and that she's gonna keep the innkeeper will keep him on as a cook for payment for giving all of these dudes free meal. And he mentions the fact that he's not a noble born child, and I think it makes sense for Hot Pot to stay where he was. I mean, like, it was cool for him being around, but it's like, he's not really a sailor like he does, like a soldier. Like, he doesn't have like any skills that would be helpful the way Gendry does, and he's not a noble the way Arya is. So like, they can't use him as like a political pawn. Like, he's like a fat kid. So they say bye to Hot Pot, and as a way of saying goodbye, he makes Arya like a piece of bread that's shaped like a wolf. And at first, she's not sure what it is, but he points it out. Although, you could tell it was like a wolf, like it made sense, like since he knows she's a Stark, and it's like in its animal shape. So, I mean, and I figured like you can only make, animal shaped bread look so awesome. So that happened. Um, So that's what happens with them. Believe after that, according to what thing guys, I think after that we go a little bit to Tyrion, and he's talking to Littlefinger about Master of the Coin stuff, and so he gets the books so he knows where things are. So he's kind of starting immediately as that. And while that's happening, he rewards his vessel, Podrick, for saving him with some ladies. So they go to Littlefinger's whorehouse, and he gets them like 3 ladies to do stuff with. So, and then he apparently, when Podrick comes back from his escapades, he gives Tyrion back some money that was supposed to be used for the whores, and so Tyrion and Bronn are like asking him about stuff. It's like, well, why didn't they want you to pay him? And apparently Podrick did a really good job, and so Tyrion and Bronn are like, sit down, Podrick. Like, it's like we need to, like, you need to go into detail about your escapades. So that was funny, and definitely a really funny, lighthearted moment. And so that's pretty much the last that we dealt with King's Landing and that. And then we got a couple moments with Theon of him escaping from wherever it was that he was held, and getting assisted by this one guy, and he just rides east, and when he almost gets recaptured again, and like when he's recaptured, like the guys who take him like threaten to rape him, and he's like, wow. And luckily he gets rescued by his rescuers again before we can have a deliverance moment in Game of Thrones. So, which was lucky for Theon. And I have to say, I don't like Theon, and I think he's a dick. And so far, I think he has gotten pretty much almost everything he deserves. But despite thinking that he's a dick, I definitely didn't want to watch him get raped. So it's like I don't want to watch that. It's like, I think you're an asshole, but it's like, I don't think you're quite that much of an asshole. And so pretty much that happens with Theon. Then we meet up with Daenerys, and she's in Astapor, and she decides to buy the slave soldiers after she goes walking along this pier that has these slaves. Yeah, pretty much just, stuck up and being crucified, and they're like dying because of whatever they did, because they did bad stuff as slaves. And so she tries to give this one slave water, and he refuses, and he's just like, let me die. And so she goes back to the slave salesman, and she's like, I want all 8,000 of your soldiers. And he's pretty much just again talking shit about Daenerys and her being essentially a spoiled whore, and that she doesn't have the money to pay for it. And then Daenerys mentions that, I will trade you a dragon for your 8,000 guys. And so he agrees to that, and they do some bargain where he wants 3 dragons, and then she's like, one, I'll give you a dragon for like all your people. And so he's like, the biggest, and she's like, fine. And so she does that. She also gets his interpreter slave. And so she kind of does that. And her 2 vassal guys are really, and I keep forgetting their names, like the redheaded guy and the older guy. Like, I know the older white-haired guy, like he's new, so, but like I always forget the redheaded guy's name. But like they're questioning her, like, and they're like, holy shit, when she gives it a dragon, and she's like, like Daenerys, like those, like your dragons are worth way more than any army. And but like she trades the dragon anyways, and she pretty much tells them the business. It's like, if you ever question my decision making in front of strangers again, I'm gonna fire your asses. And she pretty much lays it down. It's like, I value your advice, but it's like, don't question me in front of strangers. So that's pretty much what happens with Daenerys this episode. That was really cool. It was cool getting to see her be tough and, really able the way she is. So definitely looking forward to see more of her. Although I know one of her white-haired advisors talked to her about her brother, and about how he had all these men who fought into battle with him because, they were loyal to him, and that they loved him, and that they were willing to die for him, and they just weren't slaves. And so, and I think that was an interesting point. I mean, I think obviously Daenerys having a lot of slaves, it's, I guess it's practical, but I think her newest advisor makes a point about loyalty. It's like, I mean, really, how much can you guarantee someone's loyalty when they're a slave? And like in the one slave lady she gets mentions that, a lot of people, most slaves aren't afraid to, to die because, when you die, you're free. So it makes you have to wonder, like, how willing are these guys that she's going to have willing to be loyal to her or stay alive for her, if they can have a way to be free. And I think that's probably kind of the problem with, with slaves, being slave soldiers, is like, what if somebody offers them freedom? So that was definitely interesting. And then towards the end of the episode, we pick up with Jaime and Brienne, and they're getting taken to a camp. And before this happens, when they're on horseback, Jaime mentions to Brienne, they're gonna rape you when we get here, and that you should not fight them because they will kill you. And it's like, you should just let them do your business. And Brienne's like, if you were a lady, would you really let somebody do that to you? And he's like, and Jaime says, if I was a lady, I'd have them kill me, because it's like, I'm not afraid the gods. Like, I'd be a lot more afraid of getting raped. So, so then they get to the camp, and they do indeed try to rape Brienne, and she really fights them, and she really fights them nobly. But like, they have her hands tied, and they're like 6 guys, and she just can't get away from it. But like, she fucks up a couple of them, but like, she just can't get away from them. And so Jaime is talking to the leader because he feels bad for Brienne, and he finds a way to talk the leader into sparing Brienne by making up this lie about her being a noble. And so he also mentions to this guy, like, hey, if you free me, I can give you a whole shitload of gold, and I can give you and your sons titles and shit. And so the guy decides, but he's like, would you mind untying me from the tree? It's like, I'm not gonna escape, Scout's honor. So the guy tells his men to untie Jaime. After they rescue Brienne because his lie works. And so she's tied back up again, and like nothing happens to her. So they take Jaime to this fire area where they're talking about giving him like a pheasant and shit. And it turns out that that is not what is happening. So Jaime thinks he's gonna get food and taken care of, and what happens is like they bend him over a stump, and the guy starts, giving Jaime some shit, and he's like, you're like, you can just, you're just this rich guy, and you're used to everybody doing everything that you want, and if you ever get in trouble, you can just, holler for your daddy. And it's like, and he's pretty much saying, like, that's not gonna work here. So, like, he takes this big ass knife, and he pokes it in Jaime's eye, and he's like twisting it. And I don't know if he pokes it enough to like do anything to the eye because we don't really see blood, but he does cut off Jaime's hand. So that was interesting. Like, I didn't think that they were gonna maim Jaime like that at all. So that was really interesting seeing them doing that, and that's where the episode ends, with Jaime getting his hand cut off. So honestly, I don't know what's going to happen with that. So definitely a really interesting episode, and definitely looking forward to next week's. Hopefully we'll get to see more with Daenerys, kind of wondering, like I said, what's going to happen with Jaime and Brienne, especially now that Jaime's got his hand cut off. Definitely looking forward to seeing Tyrion doing cool stuff. So definitely looking forward to the stuff that's happening with Mance Rayder, especially with him starting a war. So that'll be definitely really cool to watch. So with that said, this has been a review of Game of Thrones Season 3, Episode 3, entitled A Walk of Punishment. And so I'll see. Make sure you guys comment, rate, and subscribe because I'd like to hear your guys' thought on the episode. But make sure no spoilers because I don't read the books. I just watch the show, so no spoilers. And so I'll see you guys again next time.